Hello, I'm Ed Simmons from Brook Advisors, and we have an exciting panel today on how to make legacy insurance data actually useful. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Arno Wever is head of commercial P&C insurance at Amazon Web Services. With 20 years in the London market, Arno translates AWS services into business outcomes for insurance customers, focusing on automating underwriting claims and financial operations. He specializes in agentic AI solutions for commercial insurance underwriting. Darren Goddard, Chief Data Officer of Blenheim Insurance, is an experienced data leader with 25 years in financial services, spanning investment banking and the London insurance market. He delivers enterprise-wide data solutions with a focus on business-first data products that extract maximum value from data assets. Oliver Parker, CTO Financial Services at DataArt, is a technology domain expert with over 25 years, specializing in insurance, investment banking, and retail banking. A certified cloud and enterprise architect, Oliver has led many cloud transformations, AI implementations, and digital transformations. Thank you. Okay, let's just get right into it. Arno, when you walk into an insurance company today, what does the data architecture typically look like, and where do you see the most pain?
So most of the insurance companies that I see, I focus on commercial insurance, so I see a lot in the London market. What I tend to see is an architecture that is based on solutions that were built in the 90s. If you look in the 1990s, most organizations had a policy administration system which ran on an AS400, which was a single beast. And over the years, that has then been torn apart by taking out the data warehouse and then the workflows for underwriting, for claims, and the CRM. And what you then tend to see is the data that comes out of such an architecture, first of all, tends to be focused very much on financials, so premiums, commissions, taxes, as well as claims and reserves, and not so much a focus on analytical data for underwriting or for claims. And what I tend to see in insurers these days is the remnants of that. So a data lake, which tends to be owned by the financial side of the organization, which doesn't contain much of data about, say, insured objects or quotes or claims data, and struggles with getting unstructured data as part of the data lake. And there's a desire, especially now that we're looking at process automation, we're looking at machine learning, we're looking at agentic AI, to be able to change that.
Darren, is that similar to what you're finding when you got to Blenheim?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're not a particularly old company in legacy terms. We have a pretty well-structured on-premise data setup at the moment. So really the problem here is really around taking that and moving it to the next level. We're looking at consistency of data, the quality of the data, transparency, meeting, what people expect to see these days in timeliness of that data, the availability of that data, the flexibility of access. We have a lot of time where people need to speak to technology in order to query where it's come from or how it's defined. And we want to bring that back to the business, so the business can find it out for themselves very quickly with a couple of clicks of the button, rather than asking questions again that can build delay in what they're doing. So that's really what we're trying to do here, is move ourselves along to another level to enable us to meet the business strategy, actually, which is even more important. We have a growth strategy. We're looking to add new business lines to the organization, and we need the flexibility to data to get the best value from that.
Oliver, we talked about deep legacy in AS400s and potentially even newer systems at Guidewire and Duck Creek. Why is it so hard to liberate the data?
I think it boils down to a problem we've created ourselves as a technology industry over the years, and when you start looking, as Arno mentioned and Darren mentioned there, there's almost a strata layer of technologies going back over the years. There's core systems that have been there for 20 plus years that sit there on AS400s. You've got custom COBOL, you've got ZOS, and then you've got some of the Guidewire and the DataArt things that have come along a bit more recently. But it's the same problem, different generations. So you're sort of seeing three patterns behind it. First, the core never ever really retires. It's always there. They're meant to run 10 years and they're still there. So we've layered quick integrations on that. We've done quick fixes instead of looking at the fundamentals. And second, every change that we've made, we've added one more point-to-point feed. So we've added another flat file, we've added another custom export to it. So after a decade of doing this, that integration diagram looks like complete spaghetti, and it's really hard. And I think the third thing, and the important thing, is data is treated as a byproduct of projects. It's not a project. In most organizations until very recently, data was not a product in its own right. So nobody owned that whole journey. And I think Arno mentioned that, from capture to analytics, it wasn't owned and seen as a singular product. Some organizations are further down the line in maturity of that. And, Darren's role in particular alludes to a view that's really important for Blenheim underwriting. But in other institutions, it's still stovepipes. It's very separate. So that goes.
Arno, you mentioned that previously a lot of this was finance-led and not business-led. Can you talk a little bit about the types of things you want to do there, and what's the difference?
Well, from what I've personally seen is that the early data warehouses that were being built were transitional warehouses to the pure finance solutions. And that meant that every report that came out of a data warehouse was related around finance. What is the premium for a line of business? What's your loss ratio, etc.? What's my premium per broker? Who are the biggest delinquents in paying? That sort of thing. So we've seen over the last 10 years or so is that, especially from an underwriting perspective, you want to see where can I change my products? Where are my insured objects? What makes sense to do from an underwriting perspective? Being able to integrate that into the financials. So, for example, if I am insuring 100 buildings in the UK, most policy administration systems don't allow you to split out the premium per location. And that means that in your data lake, you're having trouble in splitting that out as well. So you're going to have to go back to the quote and link that up. And that is something that's difficult. And something that Ollie mentioned, which is actually really true. I worked at Allianz for a while before I joined AWS, and there was always jokingly said that in their lifespan they never retired the system. It's not completely true in the end, but there is a big resistance of actually retiring a system, because there's always this nagging feeling in the back of your mind that you are losing a bit of functionality that you may need in the future. And you're seeing that the ability for different systems with different capabilities to come together in an analytics space, that is now what most organizations desire to do.
Darren, when we put these different business systems together in an analytics space, as Arno just mentioned, what are the metadata problems you're seeing trying to map these different diverse businesses together?
It's a very good question. When you look at yourself on these initiatives, you'll often find, the board level reporting, or the CEOs and so on will look at their data and they'll say, I don't understand where this has come from, or I don't understand the definition of this, or how can I have something that purports to be the same thing have different values in it because it's come from two different places perhaps. And that's really the problem statement you're trying to solve a lot of the time, is to build that trust back into that data and the transparency of where it's from. So we look at tools to enable us to do this. And what we're trying to do here at Blenheim is to embed that governance process, that transparency process into the business. It's interesting what Arno was saying about being finance-led. Often case that's true, but actually, we want to have the business owning this whole process from start to end, and really understanding and getting access to this data set and the metadata and understanding where it comes from. But more than just getting that and understanding it, doing it simply and speedily. A couple of clicks of the mouse should be more than enough for them to see where something has come from. And that's what modern tooling allows us to do. We're embarking on that journey. We're embedding things like governance into day one of the process. If someone wants a new data asset, be that a report or a new field or something, then governance comes in right from the start. And that data asset is thoroughly investigated and documented into the tools like the catalog and the dictionaries and such like. So that gives us a flavor that we're embedding it right into the business and allows the business to own the process, because I think that is vitally important. Otherwise, you get disengagement and it becomes a data team initiative or an IT initiative that the business ultimately disengages from, and then we end up in an unholy mess, and the value is not realized, and it becomes a non-value product that people don't benefit from. So, it's very important that way. But I think the secret on any delivery on this sort of thing is the ease of use of that data. How do I know that it's right? How is the CEO going to get his board report and go, I instinctively know this is right because I can look at it, I can click on it, and I can see exactly where that's come from. I can answer those questions myself without having to pick up the phone and ask someone in technology or the data team to explain it to me.
And Darren, it's about the business defining the rules as well, isn't it? Because quite often you see, for instance, loss ratio. One person might look at it one way, and one person might look at it another slightly different way, and it's those deltas that create the problem. So, I mean, I've seen a client where claims said the loss ratio was 59% and finance said it was 63%, which doesn't sound much, but there's a delta there that needs to be managed. So it's about owning those rules as well in terms of the data.
It is, and it's about using the platforms you have to have those discussions. You can have a lot of governance tools have now their internal communication channels. Data owners can talk to each other about definitions of what things are without having to have expensive, timely meetings. You can have those conversations and agree what it should be before you move forward and to get a trusted data asset. So, communication in any data initiative, in any data program is absolutely vital. It's communication, as someone once said. Although I think they said education, but anyway, it's the same thing. It is absolutely vital, and we need to make use of technology to get you there.
Yeah, I think with modern technologies such as serverless architectures, new file formats like Iceberg, we've really changed the economic model around doing this type of data program, particularly in terms of time to value, where these things would usually take months to deliver. Now you can see things in weeks instead of months or years. Darren, you also mentioned governance, and I think there's not only a revolution in the technology, but a revolution of how we do governance. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I've seen it. I come from a long line of big enterprise programs in the investment banking industry, and I know I learned my governance lesson working at Lehman Brothers at the time of the bankruptcy in 2008, and I can very well remember sitting there in some apartment in Portugal as Lehman went bankrupt over the weekend and seeing some numbers flash up on the Bloomberg talking about Lehman's debt in Korea, and I was absolutely horrified because I knew those numbers were completely wrong, and I knew exactly why they were wrong, because the decimal points were in the wrong place, and I knew why. And I knew where it came from when I was, and something my wife teases me about to this day, about governance. So I learned my lesson very quickly at that point that governance is absolutely vital when it comes to data initiatives, because it has real world effect. So, with the scars on my back, and a few scars on the front as well, governance, embedding it in the business and having the business take ownership of these things is the only way you're going to get these things over the line. And, and engaging with people continually. But you can't engage with them in a sense that becomes like a formal round table. Yes, of course, I have a governance forum. I have data owners scattered across the business who are responsible in the very classic way the data they sit in their areas. But it's more, it has to be more than, it's more than just a monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting or something. It's actually getting into the platforms and then championing what they're doing to the rest of the organization and having it evidenced in the platform. We have a governance platform that is available for every single person in the organization to use. And it's easy to use. It's a simple icon on the top of a web browser. They can click on it and it goes straight into the governance platform without even just opens up a side window. And they can happily type away using AI or search query tools to look for pieces of data and where it's used. And that's really, really important for ease of use. And
that's really key, though, isn't it, Darren? Because if you can't explain where the data comes from, and you're using modern technology and agentic AI and AI, it's not AI; it's a liability in essence. So that's really important.
That's right.
Arno, how do you do this without disrupting your company, your operations? How do you get this new way of working in kind of a legacy operating model? What are you seeing in terms of transformation?
So there's broadly two lines of thinking. One is replace the legacy with something more modern, which is a lengthy, costly, and very painful affair. Changing your policy administration system before you even get all the stakeholders to agree to that takes at least a year. And then by the time you're actually there, you tend to almost be ready for the next policy administration system. What we're seeing a lot in the London market is that we're starting to get data in a harmonized way out of legacy solutions. So being able to create your data lake with as exactly as Darren said, that traceability of where data came from and how it has been transformed and into space that it becomes usable for everyone. And what we're seeing is that you're then able to use the data for further processing. You're able to use that to create reports, and you're able to start using that into some of your AI processes. So a simple example, I do a lot in the underwriting automation space. So if you get a submission in, and if you want to check whether you are already on risk for that customer, then either APIing into a legacy policy administration solution or checking in your data lake. Your data lake tends to be a much easier way of looking at that. And the modern technology allows you to harmonize data much quicker and allows you to be able to view that integration much better as well.
Oliver, how do we do this when you're looking at systems where you don't own the source code and the data may be buried in deep legacy? How do you tease out that value from these legacy systems? You're on mute.
It's a good question. I mean, you really need to know your data, and you formulate your conceptuals around the data. And I think there's a question that says, okay, well, how do you surface that data, and how do you do something with it? Well, the first thing you do is you do something really messy, and you just get the data and you pull it together, and it's like a crime scene. It's absolutely horrific. You're just pulling this data and plunking it in a repository and saying, right, what can we do with this? then you can start building that medallion architecture. So that's your bronze layer where you just extract data, you get everything together. You'll have different, currency calculations. You'll have different codes for different things. You'll have policy numbers that are all over the place and in different format. All of that will happen. But then you extract down to the silver layer where you start cleaning that up and you start normalizing the data and you start doing something with it. And you're starting to see then a rational way through and a way out of this crime scene and a way to the future that you can actually do something with. And you can start then building your logic, in your gold layer. You can start building that logic and bringing that through. So you've got something that's really usable and business driven at that point. And it's about those incremental steps and making sure that you're doing the right thing without having to rip the core apart, without having to go into that spaghetti down below and start pulling things apart and breaking things. You can do this and then start to slowly move things and shift things. And I think one of the ways that I've seen it done very successfully in the past is looking at net new programs and putting the net new stuff onto new systems and building that, and then start to shave away the older and moving that over as well. So you have to show progress. You have to show benefit. Darren can't do something like this, go to the board and say, yeah, okay, well, we'll show you some outputs in about 18 months. By the way, I need X million pounds more. He's going to get laughed out of the room. He won't get anywhere. He needs a view that says, okay, well, give me 90 days and X amount. We'll show this benefit, and then we'll step and repeat. We'll do this again. We will show that benefit, and it's about incremental gains. It's about getting those. Technology is in a place that supports that now. It supports those quick wins, the easy wins, and you can start then stepping and repeating and getting more wins like that.
I think that's a really important point. You're absolutely right. There's no way I went to the board and asked for money because they would just laugh. It's some interesting and always scary statistics around this stuff. Gartner released their survey over Christmas, and they were pontificating that 88% of data programs end up failing or destroying themselves. A bit like my car engine did a couple of weeks back. Thank you, Land Rover. But you build an incremental delivery. You look at it and say, what can I deliver now? Where's the value associated? It's about building the separate data products. That's the line I'm taking here. We're looking at what can we group together, pieces of data can I group together from the inception through the various iterations of the medallion architecture on the data lake, be it S3 platforms on bronze and silver through to an RDS type solution on the gold layer, whatever it might be, but delivering it all the way through to reporting out a single data product that will meet the needs of actuarial. It'll then go on to meet the needs of finance. We'll have someone else looking at meeting the needs of claims. And above, sitting across all of that is, what does the board need? What do we need across corporate? Where do these things feed into to give a cross-corporate layer that enable us to start giving value back to the people who are your key sponsors? And as you proceed through time, you're building a series of products that add to the whole, but delivering value. And each product will realize its value, measure that and say, did we deliver the value we expected to deliver? And value can be measured in several different ways. Is it a time save value, a gain on capacity because someone's no longer doing things manually? Is it a timeliness of data? Data's now available in near real time as opposed to an overnight batch on a legacy process. Is it now more trusted? Do people save time by not having to ask someone in IT, how did it get there? What's behind this? What's the definition? Can they do it for themselves and move on? Can people create their own analytics, their own dashboards by dragging things in, knowing that it's trusted? Because I can go to the governance tool and go, I want to know about this field. It's here. It's completely validated. I can see that it's validated every single day during its transformation journey. That's what people want today. And then exciting stuff. Yeah.
Darren,
there's an expectation there as well, isn't there, Darren? Because there's a gap between what we're seeing in our everyday lives with our technology and how quick things move and how quickly we can do things on a personal level with what the enterprise has given us. there's a massive lag there. So people are aware of what the art of the possible is. So as you say, they now want that. So the demand is greater than ever.
Demand is great, and it goes back to what I was talking about at the start. Communication is everything. You can't go away, disappear for 12 months, and come back with this sort of ta-da moment. Here's a platform, because you won't last that 12 months.
And the data is complex, so it's hard to get that into the state that it is easily consumable. I think that to reiterate the points that were made, one is you need to think big, but you need to start small. You need to start with something that you understand, what good looks like, and find your way through the crime scene, as Oliver names it, to the exit. And the other part of that, and I think that's what Darren alluded to, is the owners of the data product need to be the people who create the data and who have the most benefit of having that data correct at the end of it, because they are the ones that understand it, but they're also the ones that know what happens if you screw it up.
That's exactly right. That's really important. The business own each data product. They are the product owners, actually. At Blenheim, we're not going to have this ginormous data team with dozens of engineers and data governance specialists and all those sorts of things, because actually the specialism exists in the business, and that's where it belongs, and that's how we're going to realize the value on what we're trying to build here.
You guys keep all mentioning data products. Can someone explain that approach? It'd be very helpful for people who haven't heard that before.
I think it's people get very hung up on it. It can be explained for me simply, and I'm sure people online will tell me I'm wrong and make it very complicated. But I'm a simple guy at heart. It's simply a collection of things, if you like, that come together to deliver a sole objective. So, if I'm looking at a data product, could be simply as a report. So what makes up that report? The report itself is a product, but actually when you bring things together that feed that feeds into that, becomes a transformation, and then becomes a product. So it's that individual thing that you're looking at, or a collection of things that become a whole. And it's no different than, going to the shops and buying a loaf of bread. That's a product. Going to your car dealer and hoping you get a car that's going to last more than a year. It's those sorts of things that you're looking at. They're all products, and data's no different.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's interesting. You've obviously got a lot of pain from your Land Rover there, Darren, because you keep on mentioning it. But for me, it's like going shopping, as you say. It's a number of things. It's data as individual items are products. Then you've got a recipe, which is a product. You put those two products together and you get an output, you get a finished meal, which is another product. So all of that is a set of products that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis at different levels of granularity.
I think we tend to overcomplicate these things, and it really isn't.
It's almost a manufacturing approach to data, as opposed to treating it like something different. It's really, this is the type of organizational change and operating model change that I think its question is, did that come before the technology, or did the technology changes come before that? But there's a lot of opportunity there in terms of how thinking about the business and do it a little differently. How about collaboration, Arno? We've talked a lot about, Darren said that the business owns things. What are you seeing out there in terms of AWS? So obviously, you guys focus a lot with technology.
Yeah. So what we tend to see is there's a lot of demand for what I call sexy stuff. So you want AI outcomes, you want everything automated. But what we say to our customers is the first thing you need is a data strategy, and you need to execute that data strategy to a certain extent to be able to reap the rewards. So you need to really understand what you need in order to get to your outcomes, and then how to get that. And again, start small so that you build that expertise as you build that out towards those outcomes. But what I tend to also say is if you put crappy data in your AI process, you're going to get crappy AI coming out of it. So it is super important to get that data right. And what we see in those insurance legacy solutions is there tends to be a variety of data quality. Up until the mid-10s, the standard approach for an insurance organization was to migrate data, but from one policy administration system to another, and doing that from between systems that have completely different data architectures never turns out really nice. So being able to then use that into processes down the line, you need to be really, really careful of. So it is really understanding where something comes from. I've had a situation where created a broker portal so that the broker could see which policies a customer had and drill down into what cover. Now, as soon as we realized that that included the scope for data that was migrated from another policy administration system, the whole thing fell down, because you have coverages with called other, and you've got addresses that don't match up. So that sort of thing you need to be cognizant of from the outset. So understanding from a data strategy, what do you know, not just what information are you expecting to get out of it, but also where does it sit? Is the quality okay? If the quality is not okay, do I have a strategy to basically clean that data enough for it to be usable in the next step? Those are the things that you really need to look at. And one of the advantages of starting small is you may want to say, I'm not going to use a large portion of my historical data, but I'm going to start now with creating the right data in the right quality, because at least by the end of the year, you'll have 1 year's worth of good data, which is much better than having cleansed 5 years of not so good data.
Yeah, no, just to support that. I mean, the way you broach that and the way you can do that, there's two ways of going through this. You can look at a big build, you can look at starting from scratch and doing, all the fancy stuff, or you can do, more of a focused build out. Use some of the AI tooling that's available now to get you there and to create that data lineage, to create the compliance views that Darren discussed before, and to actually get there at speed. But if you're doing that, you then need to, as you say, get that narrow focus, deliver that small piece of benefit, and then move on and do another one and another one. So AI tooling can help you build your data products and your data product set out very well, and it can help you get there at speed as well. So in typical use cases now, what used to take 2-3 months just to analyze and do a piece of an analysis and design work is actually being delivered in 2 or 3 days now. So we're seeing some rapid activity and rapid action, and that's not a POC. That's an MVP. That's something that's production ready and production scalable. So that can be done now at speed, and it's our job to make sure that the business knows how to do this and the best way to use that technology and the best way to get those rapid gains over a period of time. That's down to us to do.
And I'll support that, and I'll add a little bit to that. When you say the business, it's the actual consumer of the data. You're no longer reliant on someone who is technical to build you a report. you're able to create that report yourself, often using natural language. So it's the person who needs the data and consume the data who's able to build the product that is needed in order to do so.
Yeah, I mean, Darren discussed the thing on the top of their a user interface that allows them to go straight in and do to build stuff that they views that they want. That's exactly the use case that you're talking about there.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I'm not telling anyone we can do this in 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, we'll keep that one quiet there.
But I'm not doing. I mean, seriously, you're right. We are starting on this journey with our partners, and it's vitally important that we show value super quickly. That's what people expect. The value train is there. People know that they know what can and can't be done, and we have to deliver these products product by product, one by one, in a timely fashion, because the impatience is extreme. So people know and want immediacy and results now. So we will make a full use of modern tooling to make sure that's the case.
Darren, you mentioned over communication, and I think that's important. And you mentioned going one area at a time. How do you pick which area to go through? How do you pick who you want to work with, what area, what business? What do you look for in selecting the first area to work on?
That's a brilliant question, and I entertained myself for a little while on this one before Christmas, because we're literally starting this journey right now, and it's like, who do you go with first? So initially, I created a business calendar for the whole year ahead, and I asked the data owners who represent each of the business functions, being actuary, finance, claims, and so on, and operations and such like. And I said, mark on the business times of the year where we can't touch you. So, for example, renewal season or something like that, or regulatory submissions, those sorts of things, where you're just never going to be able to talk to us. And times of the year where you might have capacity, times of the month, even maybe it's 2 weeks at the end of the month or something like that. And I thought that will help inform who you go to first. And then where's the biggest value associated with that? So biggest bang for the buck, low hanging fruit, all those lovely expressions. And I got the calendar back, and it turns out that no one had any capacity at all. Everyone's fully busy all the time, and and it's just not going to happen. So it's a very interesting question. So in the end, it comes back to that. Okay, we appreciate everyone's busy, but everyone can see the value of what we're trying to do. Everyone knows the problem statement right from the start. Huge amount of goodwill to get these things done. So, we are obviously appealing to the areas that actually have a very good knowledge of their data asset and don't need that big hand-holding straight away. So people like, actuarial team very clearly understand what they're doing. They understand their output, they understand their input, they understand all their own transformations, because they do it all themselves. They're a cottage industry in the data industry all on their own. So they know it already. So we can clearly leverage that knowledge to build out a really good data product for them in our new cloud platform. So with the governance wrapped around it. Then clearly that data actually feeds into the wider corporate model. Other people are using actuarial data. So we start to get champions across the organization because they're now seeing the benefit of it. Then you follow alongside that, you can go with obvious teams like claims, who have a very clear set of data needs and their reporting needs. So again, it's an easy win on that one because they clearly understand what they're doing. It gets more complicated when you start looking at underwriters or operations or compliance and so on. But but you start building your champions, and then hopefully people will come on board naturally. But it is really around, we've picked people who understand what they're doing now and understand the journey because they're already doing it.
Oliver, any thoughts?
I think in terms of where to start and where to look it is always an interesting question. I mean, if I was looking at this from day one, and if I was looking at it as in, what do I do on Monday? I come in on Monday. How do I look at this? How do I broach this? What do I do? Well, the first thing is, sure as hell, I am not going to be looking at the tooling. I'm not going to look at that first. I'm not going to look at the technology to begin with. I'm going to focus down and say, okay, what are the first 3 critical domains that I want to look at and review? Policy, claims, brokerage, party broker. For each, pick one killer question that the business either can't answer or struggles to answer and gets different responses. And then looking at that gives you sort of a North Star for that first bit that you're looking at. And then, I'd look at the systems that are behind that are feeding that domain. Old AS400, there's a spreadsheet system over here, there's a guidewire system over there. Decide, for each where you start with those extracts, what you're doing with it, and bring that in, and write down the known bad bits, the missing fields, the dirty codes, all of those things. Pull that together. So now you've got that North Star, and you know what the missing bits are and the horrible bits are, and those pain points. Nobody's ever surprised by that. It's always known, and people have been moaning about it for the last 6 months to a year. So it's very quick and easy to get. And then the third thing is pick 3 deliverables that can be done in 60, 90 days. Look at a 90-day plan and mark out, bronze, silver, gold slice for a single domain. Work that out. Look what you're doing. Build a governance spine as well, that data catalog, the lineage to the pipelines, all of those things. And then, look at the visible outcome. And Darren's mentioned it. Arno's mentioned it. Where are we going? What is the exact benefit that we're seeing in there? Is it a dashboard? Is it a pricing prototype? Is it a report that's saving time? Something that somebody will be proud to stand up in the next exec meeting and go, look what the guys have done in 90 days. Look what they've done in 60 days. They've developed this and it saved us that. It's amazing results that we've got here. Let's go off and do something else. What's next? That's the result that you want from your exec team. So if you can tick those boxes in 90 days, you've moved the conversation from, PowerPoint slide, what can we do, to modernization as something that people are using on a day-to-day basis. So I'd look at it that way. Then you can start looking at the tooling. So you define what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what the benefits are. Then you look at the tooling. That'll give you a decent approach to this.
I think that's right. We are definitely in a hurry, and we will build, in our new cloud platform, we will build a foundational layer which will contain, all of our policy admin data, all of our actuarial, formatted data and policy documents, these sorts of things. We'll move into that cloud immediately. We're just going to bring it straight into our landing zone so we can start manipulating it. The data products will come from there. And then we'll start building out the sort of the silver schemas and the gold schemas, and the actual reporting products will come from there, domain by domain, as you say. We're going to start with actuarial and finance and claims, and then we achieved this with a little bit of this last year, where we wanted to get some champions. So we very quickly built a platform for claims and embedded it in our governance tool. And then we asked the head of claims to do a show and tell to the whole business on what are we doing in governance. And he was able to demonstrate, this is where our data sits, this is where it's defined, and oh look, I can go into my Power BI dashboards from inside the governance tool and do all these things. And he demoed that to the whole of the company. And that's how you build your champions and your credibility as a data solution.
All right, before we finish, I have to ask Arno a tough question. What would you not do?
What would you not do? I think the obvious answer is nothing. If you do nothing, you're behind the curve, and the changes that we are seeing in the data space are so quick that if you haven't started experimenting now, your learning curve of how to get to a state that makes you average for the industry is going to be huge. So that's one. The second is I would not make this a technology project. We've mentioned the business owners, the business owning the data products. It's the business that needs to drive it. One of the things we have seen in recent years is a move towards agile methodology. And one of the big benefits of that is that it tends to be headed up by someone from the business, and preferably someone who's got P&L responsibility. That means that you're able to get the business outcomes, because if the product owner doesn't understand the outcome, then they're going to say no. It means that you're going to get the request of value for money. So you're not going to get gold plating, and you are going to have to supply very, very good KPIs to be able to continue. So one of the things that was sort of implied by what Darren was saying is that you need to know what success looks like. So you need to be able to really explain, saying, by doing this, we are saving this much, or we are being this much more efficient, or you have these capabilities that you didn't have before. And then being able to measure that you are achieving those, that sets you up for the next round. Because if you're going to go back to the board and saying, hey, we built our first product, we now need to build the second one. If the first one has a measurable success, then you're much more likely to get the next bag of money to do the second one. So, and that requires the business ownership. And the more that business and IT work together hand in hand, maybe not literally, the better the outcomes are.
Darren, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll be very quick. My initial thought was don't do it, just run away. Then my second thoughts was just a few bullet points I wrote down earlier today. So, if you're coming into these initiatives, challenge the value statements you're going to be measured against. Make sure you understand that. Communication ×3. Communication, communication, communication. Business engagement, we've talked about that a lot. Absolutely vital. Last two, from a personal perspective, show no fear. Just get into it. And finally, lean into your peer group.
That's a good one.
Really good. Oliver, final thoughts, and then we'll...
Yeah, I think I'll be repeating what the guys have said, but for me, there's an element here. It's communication, communication, communication. That's really key. Keep that vision small and keep it realistic, and actually deliver something that's measurable. Measure at every single point. If you don't do that, you're not going to get any more budget, and you'll be out of the door anyway. You've got to do a good job, and you've got to make an impact. Make an impact with everything that you do, and make sure you can tie what you're doing to an impact. That's really important.
Arno, last one, and then then we'll end.
Well, I think that there's nothing to add to what's been said there.
I'll end with one thing that I thought: choose your partners well and work with people you like to work with. And thank you, everybody, for a wonderful webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.